Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Q&A support class. And so if you can see me okay, if you can hear me okay, send them hi in the chat box, and then we will get started. Hi, Pranchiv. Hi, Mani. Hi, Hitath. It was good, thank you. Hi, Jun. Hi, Oscar. Hi, Shima. Hi, Alifa. Naray. Safia. Sanvika. Very good. So good to see you all here. No worries at all, Hitath. Hi, Avery, Marcus, Miran, Daria, Mateo. Very good. So today's Q&A session, hey Ayan, we're going to be going through a little bit of reading revision from earlier in the week because a lot of people said the reading was a little bit tough earlier in the week. How did people find the reading comprehension we did in class, the passages we did in class? Easy, hard, medium? Some people are saying good, some people are saying hard. It was pretty hard, is the reality. So if you found it easy, that's amazing, but it was quite difficult and it was a little bit harder than normally what you would see on the exam. There sometimes is one passage that maybe is that difficulty, which is why it's worth making sure we're comfortable with it. Good to hear Junwei says mid-hard. It's good to be comfortable with it. So number one, if that comes up, we're okay with it. But if there's questions that are easier than that, we're going to be faster. We're going to find them easier than most people. And so we're going to go through a few of those questions just to do a little bit of extra practice. Then we're going to go through a lot of the questions that have been sent through. So we've got a lot of questions sent through this week. Particularly, one thing is there was a lot of people sending through these questions. So maybe let's just ask, how do people find about these ones? These ones, Changeonia, Denarica, Coinova, and these sort of ones here. How do people feel about these ones? People are saying hard. Now, these questions were probably the hardest questions we've had in homework, and people generally found them extremely difficult. And so what we're actually going to do, rather than just me quickly explaining them in a minute and everyone saying it was difficult, someone said that Charles said last week that it was wrong. So yeah, Charles had a look at it afterwards and he realized that it was actually correct. And Charles has actually put together a full lesson that we're going to be doing next Friday. So next Friday, Charles will be running this class. It's going to be a full lesson on these questions. So we will have other Q&As available as well. But he's going to break down how to do these really difficult questions, which some of you will have done in the homework. Some of you may not be quite up to that yet. We're going to have a full lesson of these. And so if you're one of the many people who've sent these through to us, we is going to be doing that. Uzair said, why is Charlie teaching us? Where is Charles? Uzair says, get Charles back right now. Charles is away for the weekend. So he's not here today, unfortunately, but he'll be back next week. And next Fridays we'll spend probably about 60 minutes going through these. And then we'll do some Q&A at the end. But yes, I am excited to teach a Friday class for the first time in a while. So let's just get into it. So reading comprehension throughout the week. We spent a bit of time looking at difficult passages. We're going to look at one more hard passage now. But there was a big question that came up from a few students just in the chat, which is, should you read the passage first or should you read the question first? What do we think? Read the question first, read the passage first. What's the best strategy? What do we think? So there's a bit of debate in the chat there. Now, the reality is that both methods can work. So if you really prefer doing one way, that's okay. But there's a most optimal way. And so basically the worst method is to very slowly read the passage, very, very slowly read through it, then have a look at the question, then go back to the passage and again, read it slowly, trying to find the right answer. That's like the worst possible thing you can do. Let's say that's a 1 out of 10 in terms of your effectiveness on the exam. Now, the next level up from that is which is probably a 7 out of 10. So it's significantly better. It's pretty good. It's really most of the time all you need, which is you read the question first, you then use that knowledge. So you know, okay, I'm looking for what can be concluded about dolphin hunting techniques, and you go through and read the passage and you use that knowledge from the question to find the right answer. That's probably 7 out of 10. Maybe 8 out of 10. Let's say that's 8 out of 10 in terms of how effective that strategy is. If you want to improve that a little bit and go up to, let's say, a 9 out of 10 in how effective you are, you don't read the whole passage first slowly, but you develop the skill of being able to very quickly have a quick 10-second look at the passage. It's called pre-reading. get the main points, and then read the question, and then actually read the passage. So what that would actually look like is I would initially look at this and just quickly scan through them. So I'm only going to take 10 seconds, and I would just want to figure out in just the simplest way possible what's roughly this about and what's roughly this about. So I'm not going to read it properly. I'm just going to say, okay, this first paragraph here, it's mainly about dolphins being incredibly skilled hunters, and it looks to be about dolphins in general and hunting. And this one here looks to be about hunting as a team and different ways they can hunt and hunting as a team. So that's all I've done. I haven't really read the passage. I've just quickly figured out that this paragraph is mainly about dolphin hunting at a very high level. And here is really dolphin hunting, more specifics, exactly how they hunt, different ways they hunt in groups on their own, and so on. And so that means when I come back and read this question, I have more context with me. And so it allows me to make more sense of it. So I know based on the passage, what can be concluded about dolphin hunting techniques. Now I know, well, dolphin hunting techniques is probably mainly going to be in this paragraph here, for example, because this one was kind of quite high level about dolphin hunting. This one was more about fish herding and different things. So that's kind of like the most optimal strategy in terms of reading comprehension. We're going to spend a bit of time getting ourselves up to that. So Gaia, if you had her during the week, who's one of our UCAT tutors who came down, that's a technique we teach for UCAT, because for UCAT, you have to be able to do that, because for context on the UCAT exam, you've only got 30 seconds per question. On this exam, if you don't do that, it's okay. You can get away with just reading the question and doing this. Some people are saying, what's a UCAT exam? The UCAT exam is like this, the exam you're all sitting, but it's for people wanting to get into medicine after year 12. So it's just like a harder version of this exam for people who want to get into medicine, basically. So on this exam, just reading the question first and then reading the passage is pretty smart. Like most people don't do that. You're still going to beat most people by doing that. But if you can do the extra little thing, which is spend 5 to 10 seconds quickly looking at the passage, figure out roughly what each paragraph is about, and then when you read the question, you can use that knowledge to your advantage. That's kind of even smarter. So that's kind of the ultimate technique. Now I'm going to go to Jay, who's got a question or a comment. Some people are saying, is the UCAT for Monash or other countries? So basically the UCAT exam is an exam that you can sit if you want to get into medicine after year 12. And if you sit that exam, you can study medicine in Australia, in New Zealand, in the UK, basically in those 3 countries. So it's pretty good for that reason. Now, what do we think about Jay? What have you got on your mind?
So I think like in like the one of the first videos in reading comprehension, you especially stated like the 3-step system for success, where it's like always read the question first, then use the scan method where you just quickly go through like try to find the main points, and then or if the question's like inferring or like what is the tone of the passage or something like that, then you use like speed reading techniques where you like improve like how many words you read per like second or like something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that's kind of what I'd recommend. So basically, just like Jay said, if I was going to say what was the ultimate method does depend on the question. Because, for example, if there was a question and it said, let's say, if it said, what is fish herding? What is fish herding? Now, if the question was literally just what is fish herding, you know that information is going to be in here somewhere. And when you see fish herding in bracket, or what's that called, in quotation marks, you know the answer about what fish herding is going to be somewhere around here. Realistically, you could just ignore the rest of the passage, just read this sentence. You're probably going to get the answer right 99 times out of 100. But if it says something like this, based on the passage, what can be concluded about dolphin hunting techniques? That is going to require you to understand dolphin hunting techniques fairly well to be able to get the right answer. And so you're probably going to have to read it fairly carefully and clearly to be able to pick it out. And so that's one thing I would say there. The ultimate strategy actually does depend a little bit on what the question is. Now, some people are saying different things. Perfect. So let's have a go at, maybe let's just have a go at this question here. So does anyone want to have a go at sending what they think the answer is for this one here? Some people are saying C, some people are saying A, some people are saying B. Now, for people who are asking about the UCAT exams, you have to sit it if you want to become a doctor. Unfortunately, you do. So to get into medicine, they consider how you do at school, but also this exam as well. So we've got some people saying B, some people saying A, some people saying C, and we've got one person saying D. Now, some people are saying they already did this question for homework. That is very true, because this is a Q&A support class. We're going through questions that people have sent in from the homework that they struggled with. And so you probably will have seen all of these questions before if you've done the homework. Okay, so I'm going to pause the chat box for just 1 second as I read through this so we can stay focused. It says, based on the passage, what can be concluded about dolphin hunting techniques? Number one, dolphins rely primarily on echolocation when hunting alone, while group hunting often involves coordinated swimming patterns to trap prey. Now, like we kind of said before, because I know this first paragraph here is mainly about it at a high level, I'll quickly have a look here. It says these marine mammals work together. Okay, so this is actually here. It says they use echolocation clicks in their speed to find and catch efficiently when working together. So these marine mammals work together and use their natural tools. Okay, once it spots a target. Okay, so maybe let's just hear, does anyone want to explain what they think the answer is? Does anyone want to unmute? Anyone want to have a go at explaining what they think the answer is to this question? Anyone have an idea? Mateo, very good. I'll let you unmute.
So the question is based on the passage, what can be concluded about dolphin hunting techniques? And from the first paragraph, it says that they use echolocation and when primarily hunting alone, while group hunting, well, it does explicitly mention in the text that it does involve coordinated swimming patterns. So the most likely to be the answer would be A.
I agree. So Mateo's exactly right there. So if you look at this first paragraph was actually mainly about when they're hunting alone. So it says here, these marine mammals work together. So that makes you think what's about to come is going to be about them working together. But it says use their natural tools like their echolocation, clicks and their speed to find and catch fish efficiently. When hunting alone, the dolphin will send out sound waves. Sending out sound waves is using echolocation. It's using this. So they do use this when hunting alone. While group hunting often involves coordinated swimming patterns like fish herding. And so A was the correct answer there because when they hunt alone, they send out these sound waves, which we call echolocation. And when they are hunting in a group, they herd all the fish together, and that's how they hunt them. So this one here is correct. Now, first one, if we look at, maybe I'll go to Oscar, who's got a question.
With C, it says that dolphins, I picked A, but like with dolphins, well, for C, it says that they use hunting methods based on environmental conditions, which it's also kind of mentioned, or at least hinted at throughout the text.
Yeah.
So what makes that wrong and A right?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And if you look at this one here, dolphins adapt their hunting methods based on environmental conditions. Is that true to some extent? Yeah, it's kind of hinted at. I don't think it explicitly says it in the passage that they specifically definitely do this, but we can reasonably infer that this is the case. And do they use both individual and group strategies to catch fish? They do. And so there's quite a bit of truth to C, to this third one here. Does anyone know why C isn't the best answer? Why it can't necessarily be concluded? Anyone have any ideas why maybe A, the first option there, is a bit better? Mateo?
So the reason C is not the correct answer, though it is partially correct. It doesn't, I mean, sure, it is hinted at that they adapt their hunting methods based on environmental conditions, but it doesn't really isn't really explained. It's just really hinted at. So the question is based on the passage. So you're really looking at what's in the text rather than what's really hinted at.
Yeah, I would agree with Mateo there. And that basically when it says the word concluded, to conclude something, we need to have a decent amount of evidence for it. Ideally, to conclude something, they're not saying what can be inferred. If they said, what could we infer? There's a few hints about it. What could you infer? Then I'd say C is pretty good. We could probably infer that maybe they do change whether they do it in groups or individuals based on environment, but they don't specifically say that. So we can't really conclude it because they don't exactly say it. And so that's why A is the best option there. They rely on echolocation when hunting alone, while group hunting often involves coordinated swimming patterns. Both of these things can kind of be improvement within it itself. C, it's like there's a bit of a hint of it, but there's not solid evidence. For B, some people are saying, why not B? Dolphins use a combination of physical abilities and intelligence, with fish herding being the most effective strategy. This part here is what makes it wrong. Fish herding being the most effective hunting strategy. Wouldn't really say that's true. To say it's the most effective, it says here one of their most fascinating techniques is called fish herding. I'm sure it's pretty effective, but to say it's the most effective, that's what makes this one wrong. So this one's wrong because it sort of makes a bit of an assumption here. This one, there's probably just not quite enough evidence. A is just better. This one's not wrong. This one's just better. And this one here, they demonstrate strategic thinking. This one, again, there's just not really much evidence for this. Maybe let's just go to Hugo and Manaz. We'll hear what they say. Go to Hugo first.
Sorry, sorry, it was hand up from before.
Oh, good. No worries. What about Manaz? What do you think?
I think it's also A because like it's the question asks us like based on the passage which can be concluded, and like it's actually kind of asking for like the main like effective answer and like the answer that's actually mainly like about the text, and like so A is technically telling us in simple words that like dolphins like rely primarily on echolocation and like when hunting alone, and then while group hunting often involves coordinated swimming patterns. It tells us in two simple words when they're hunting alone they're using like another technique, and then when hunting together like they use like swimming patterns, which is actually mentioned in the text. And C just tells us that like dolphins like adapt the hunting method based on environmental conditions, and that's not really mentioned in the text that much. It mainly just tells us like what type of like techniques they use individually, like whether they're in group hunting or like individually hunting.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree with Manaz there in that the reality is that sometimes we can definitely disprove these three. I would say the second one is there's definitely a real weakness with that one. The last one, there's a weakness to it. But A perfectly summarizes, it perfectly concludes dolphin hunting, really, in techniques from this paragraph here. And so I think who was it there who said, Oscar said A is just better. He was quoting me. But the reality is that often on the exam, there's going to be two options. They both have some truth to them. One of them is a little bit true, and the other one is perfect. And they're the trickiest questions. The trickiest questions is where there's two answers. They both have a bit of truth to them. One of them just has more truth to it than the other. It's a better option. And so that's one thing to be mindful of. If you see two options, you think, well, they're both true, just ask yourself, well, what's one small thing about one of them that could make it wrong? In this case here, this one, we're making a bit of an assumption with the first part there. So let's have a look at this second question. Same passage. I'll delete all this from the screen. Send your answer into the chat box again. So the question is, which of these facts about dolphin hunting techniques is most accurate? What's most accurate here? So Teo says B. Tar says B. Zarif says B. Chow says B. Okay, Uzair, good job. Samin, good job. Nehan, good stuff as well. Makanka, Junwei, very good, Junwei. So like a lot of you have picked, B is the best option here. Why is it the best option? Well, let's just see what's wrong with all the other options as the first point. So the first one says dolphins use echolocation when hunting alone, but rely solely on physical speed. Now, we know that that is not true. They don't rely solely on physical speed. Whoops. What do you think, Jay, as well? I'll let you unmute.
I thought that I thought that like for A, it's really like like solely gives it away because it's like solely is an assumption. So
Yeah.
that's perfectly like just crosses it out. And then
Yeah.
B, there's nothing wrong with it. So there's no assumptions being made. So like originally I was kind of stirred to it, and then but I still went through like just the other two, which
Yeah.
was dolphins primarily. So for me, primarily gave it away. And
Yeah.
so that's why, and then for D, it was like individual dolphins locate prey while that always ends. So like it was not, that was also another assumption. So all three of them were like assumptions to me.
Agree. So what Jay's identified there is something called, which my writing on here is not very good. Let's see if I can do it. Something called extreme language. Now, does anyone know what extreme language is? It's essentially when words that make the, okay, let's hear from, maybe we'll go to Marcus.
Extreme language is language that is not nuanced enough, and it is kind of biased and picks one side or one action as happening more than it does.
Exactly right. So just like Marcus said, extreme language is when it's very exaggerated. It's saying something, they rely solely on physical speed. It's primarily hunting. It always ends with this. Extreme language, or Chow says, says extreme lasagna. That's not good. Maybe I'll just cross it out. But extreme language is when you're making big statements. Something that requires a lot of proof. If I said this always happens, this never happens, that type of language is what we call extreme language, and that's a hint to us that answer is going to be hard for it to be right. Because, for example, this here that says rely solely on physical speed. If there's one single other thing that they do other than physical speed, then it's wrong. So same thing here. It always ends with fish being driven into the shore. Then if there's any ever situation where that doesn't happen, then that's not good. So this question here, we did pretty good. So that's nice. So we might do one more of these for revision, then we will go into a few other questions. So what about this one here? This is an implication question, an inference question, which is a little bit tricky. So which of the following is not implied to be a hunting technique used by dolphins? Creating waves, circling around schools of fish, using echolocation, or driving fish towards shallow waters to limit their escape routes. Hugo says A, Nahan says A, Fanshift says A, very quick. Troy recommends a process of elimination for this one. So does Marcus. Maybe let's hear from, we've got a student with a hand up. I'll let them unmute.
I think it's A, because the other options are not specified. Like they are specified, sorry. They are specified that they do that.
Yeah.
And the question is asking which of the following is not implied to be a hunting technique.
Yeah.
A, creating waves to disorientate fish. That never shows up. So
Yeah.
we know that that's the correct answer. Circling around schools of fish. Yeah, that was fish herding. You're using echolation, that's in the first paragraph.
Yeah.
Driving fish towards shallow waters, that was also in the second paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Really, really well decoded there. So exactly like we heard, the first option was the correct one, option A, because all of these other ones, we can see them here. Echolocation's here, fish herding's here, which is this one, circling around schools of fish, and driving fish towards shallow waters, that was there as well. And so the first option was just one that wasn't really mentioned anyway. And that's why one was correct. Aiden's got an interesting other hunting technique in the chat there. And Jay says that he is in fact a fish. So he'll have to be careful of these dolphin hunting techniques. Now, what we're going to do is let's jump onto some Q&A questions. So there's a few different ones that have come through. These particular ones have been sent through by a lot of people. So I'm kind of keen to hear, maybe just send what you think is the answer to this one in the chat, but also just tell me what's hard about this one. What do people find hard about this one? I'll kind of break down how we go about it. Guitar says these are fun. I personally like these questions. I think it's fun trying to break them down. Jonathan, what do you think?
So like Charles said in a previous session, he says that always do like the arithmetic first. So 4 times 5 is 20, 6 times 3 is 18, 5 times 2 is 10, 3 times 4 is 12. So well, you have all those values, and then what you want to do is you want to see what the difference is. So the difference between 12 and 19 is 7. And then you
Yeah.
want to look at what 7 has in common with 3, 3 and 4, like 3 plus 4 or 4 minus 3. And then you'll see that 7 is 3 plus 4. So then you can kind of find a pattern. And then just to double check, you can do that with the other numbers as well.
Yeah, exactly right. So the way Jonathan explained it there is perfect. I know a few people have mentioned that people sent this in last week as well. This question, not many people got it right. I think about these ones, about 30% of people got them right in the homework. So a lot of people have been sending it through. And exactly like Jonathan said, first step, just pretend it's a normal maths problem. 3 times 4 equals 12. And so then naturally you can wonder, well, if 3 times 4 equals 12, what actually leads to, how does it get to 19? 5 times 2 equals 10. How could we get to 17? 6 times 3 equals 18. How could we get to 27? And you can start to see, well, it's increasing by every single time. It's increasing. We know it's increasing. 3 by 4 equals 12, but the answer is 19. So it's gone up by 7, which happens to be, if you add 3 and 4 together, that gives you 7. 5 times 2 equals 10, but somehow it equals 17. And so if we added 5 and 2, it would give us 17. So what the pattern actually here is, to get the answer, you have to first multiply the numbers normally, but then add them up together. And so what that means, I'm just going to type it here on screen so it's clear. What this actually means, when it says 3 times 4 equals 19, to actually figure this out, what the pattern is, essentially it's like a bit of a trick. You have to multiply the numbers together initially, which gives you 12. But then the next step to get the actual final answer according to their special system is you just now add these two together. So you now do 3 plus 4, which equals 7. And you plus that onto 12. That gives you 19. So this system here gets you the answer every single time. So if we try it again on the next one, for example, we initially do 5 times 2 equals 10, but the answer is 17. But if we then did 5 plus 2, well, that equals 7. And then if we add 10 plus 7, that equals 17. And so to get the correct answer, exactly like Gory said, who is on the ball with this one, the first thing we do is we obviously just treat it like a normal problem. 7 times 2 equals 14. But then we have to do 7 plus 2, which equals 9. We add them together as the second step, which then gives us 23. And so 23 was the right answer here. So step 1, just treat it as if it's normal. Figure out what would 3 times 4 be. It would obviously be 12. And then try and figure out, well, how could they possibly have gone from 12 to 19? Well, they probably just added these two together, for example. Let's have a look at the next question. How would that be for this one? This one's a bit different. It's a little bit trickier, maybe. Yeah, we've got a student unmuting. Feel free to explain.
I realized instantly that, as someone else said, you have to do the multiplication first and act it as a normal question. So
Yeah.
4 times 3 is 12.
Yeah.
And then it's in the difference from 48 and 12 is quite big. So probably it's going to be multiplication.
Yeah.
So I would divide 48 by 12 and see what comes from that.
Yeah.
And whatever comes from that is what it needs to be multiplied by.
Yeah.
If the answer to the division is in the sum, then that's the pattern.
Yeah, exactly right.
And 48 divided by 12 is 4.
Yeah, exactly right. That's very, very well explained. I like the way you thought about that as well. And so what we've seen here is what you want to do. First thing, just pretend it's a normal question. 4 by 3 equals 12. But we know that 4 by 3 needs to equal 48. And so something needs to happen. What needs to happen? Well, it seems like we need to do 12 by 4. And so then, just like we heard, well, that makes me think, well, maybe we multiply it by the first number. Maybe we do 4 by 3, and then we multiply that by the first number, which is 4. So that's 48. Isaac, what do you think?
So the method that I used was I squared the first number and then times it by 3.
That's true. That's interesting. So you did 4
Yeah.
squared.
4 squared is 16, times 3 is 48, 5 squared is 25, times 2 is 50, 3 squared is 9, times 6 is 54, and 7 squared is 49, times 4 is 196. So 8 times 2 would be 8 squared, which would be 64 times 2, which is 128.
It's very smart. I definitely didn't think of that way when we made the question, but it works and it's faster than the other way. That's really good. I like that way as well. That's a good example that often with these questions, there's multiple ways of getting to the right answer. And this is the type of maths question that they're asking more in maths now and in quantitative reasoning as well. ASA is starting to less give us really hard questions. They're not going to most likely give us many sort of, in the past, they sometimes used to put like a year 10 level question on the exam. But the reality is that's a bit unfair because some people haven't learned year 10 level concepts. And so they don't ever do that now. They only test year 8 stuff, maybe at the most early year 9, but they'll instead make the question hard to figure out what on earth it's talking about. Like this question here, 4 by 3 equals 48, you'll think, well, that's not true. And so these type of ones, where we have to think, are more and more. Now, Shima says how many questions are there in the test and how long. So for quantitative reasoning, there was 45 questions last year in 30 minutes. In maths last year, there was 35 questions in, I think it was 35 minutes, wasn't it? It's 1 minute per question. And so there was a lot of these abstract type of questions, and so they require us to think a bit. Now, some people are saying how many of these questions there will be. The main thing is for these ones, they don't necessarily always have like 10 of the same question, but they have similar style of questions. So in your maths and quantitative, there's going to be a lot of questions that make you think. And so doing as many different types of these questions as possible so you can train yourself to figure out, well, okay, this is a bit of a weird one. How do I go about it? That's why you'll notice every week now in maths, there's different abstract ones that are a bit strange. You'll get used to that and build that as a skill, which if the exact question comes up, great, that's going to be easy. But if a different question comes up, you're going to be able to use that skill on those questions as well. Exactly. So Arnav says, once you get the hang of these are easy, which is true. These questions, once you get the hang of them, they're not that bad. Now, the answer, like quite a few of you have said, let's use Isaac's technique because I like it the most. You do 8 squared. So 8 times 8 equals 64. 64 times 2 equals 128. So that was the correct answer there. So nice and easy. Now, I've got one more of these. I added it in because a lot of people sent it in and I thought it would be fun to do a third one. Anyone want to keep your hand up if you want to explain this one or send your answer, what you think is the answer in the chat? Maybe let's hear from Jonathan if you still, or maybe let's hear from Safia because we haven't heard from her yet. Safia, what do you think?
Okay, so like I'm not 100% sure, but just looking at the first 2 questions, I could tell that, so first I times 2 by 5, and that's 10, and then I minus the first number, which is 2. That's 8.
Yeah. Exactly right. And then with the second one, did you do 3 by 4, so it gives you 12 and then minus 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the trick comes on the third and fourth ones. Do you know what the trick is here?
No.
No, so don't worry because I was just looking
at the number.
Yeah. Did you say smallest number?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically what you do is just like Safia said, you you subtract the smallest number. So you do 2 by 5, which gives us 10, and then you subtract the smaller of these 2 numbers, which gives us 8. You do 3 by 4, which gives us 9, which gives us 12, and you subtract the smallest number, which is 3. You do 6 by 2, which is 12, and then you subtract 2 because that's the smallest number, which gives us 10. And so maybe let's just hear, maybe Chow, how would you explain this one to get the right answer?
I just did the I just eliminated them because the closest the thing here is 6 times 2. So, and 6 times 2 equals 10, and all of these are, if you round it up or down, it's 20 except for 12. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that's good. So in this case, 5 by 3 equals 15. We know the pattern was we do it normally, we do 5 by 3 equals 15, and then we just subtract the smaller of these numbers from the outcome. So 5 by 3 equals 15 minus 3 gives us 12. So that was the answer there. So we'll do lots more of these sort of thinking-based questions in the lead up to the exam. Now, a few people in the chat have been saying, when are we going to do verbal reasoning in the Q&As? And the answer to that question is when we get questions for it. So these Q&As, I saw a few people asking about how do you send questions into these Q&As earlier on. Basically, we just cover the content that's sent through. So support@edaccelerator.com, send through any questions that you find difficult and we will cover them. We'll either cover them in the most recent Q&A, or if it's a really hard concept, what we're going to do now is we're going to run a bit of a session on it for about 45 minutes where we break that whole concept down in a bit more detail. Because I'm sure some of you would find, particularly for maths, if it's a concept you've never learned before, if I explained it to you in 1 minute, it's not really going to make sense. It's going to take 30, 40 minutes to properly explain the whole topic for it to really make sense, which is what we want. And so that's what we're going to start doing. We'll do a little mini masterclass like that on the lead up to the exam. We've got one more of these sort of pattern questions, and we're going to do a bit of a pattern test a little bit later on. But what do we think? Find the missing number in the series: 2, 10, 4, 22, something, 34. Does anyone know? Anyone explain what's going on here? So Jay has got an idea.
Just looking at the question, I think I did this before, but so 2 times, oh no, I forgot. Oh no, I got it. I think I got it. So it's 2 plus 8 is 10. 4, no, I forgot. But my question was for like the last question, but so the last question, like, oh sorry, you kind of skipped that one. So yeah, so what I did was, so I did 2 times 5, which was 10, and then I realized that so then you just minus 2. So I've generally thought it was just the first number. Same with like the second one. But then once I went to like the third one, I was like, no, wait, it's not the first number. But I saw like a pattern between 2 and 3s. And also I saw that whenever there's like a 2 or 3 in the question, you minus it. I was not really thinking about like the smaller numbers, but like I was thinking like more about like the 2, and I was kind of focused on those 2 numbers. So whenever I did the question and then I minused it, like 6 times 2 is 12, minus 2 is 10, 4 times 3 is 12, minus 3 is 9, and then 5 times 3 is 15, minus 3 is 12. Yep. So that's
Exactly right. That's good. That's a good one.
I also had another question. Can you do like a lesson on like surds and like factorization and stuff like that? Because I didn't understand it.
So we will do a lesson on that right before the exam as a bit of an optional one, just because surds could come up on the exam and factorization could come up, but it hasn't come up for the last 5 years. And so we'll do that as a bit of a bonus one where if people want to push themselves, we'll teach it, but it hasn't come up for a while. Now, I know quite a few people were talking about this question and saying, whoops, this next one, and saying there was a pattern jump there. Maybe Azak, did you want to explain this one?
Yeah, so I was watching one of the resource videos, and I think what you guys said in this one is that this is a fluctuating pattern. So it jumps. So for example, you'll have the 10 plus, and then you skip the 4, plus 12 is 22, and then you skip the question mark, plus 12 is 34, and then the other numbers there, they'll also have a fluctuation where 2 plus 2 and then plus 2 again. So I got that from the resource videos that you have.
That's really good. So this particular one, these pattern ones, if you watch that video, it kind of explains them pretty easily. So like Azak did, you'll be able to get it pretty easily right. We will cover it in class as well. There's 2 patterns here. So this is what we'll call a pattern jump, like Azak and a few other people mentioned. So it goes 10 to 22 to 34. There's a pattern of plus 12. And then it goes 2, 4, which is an easy pattern. It's just plus 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 plus 2 equals 6. And so that was the right answer there. And so, yeah, for this particular type of question, if you're a little bit unsure about these patterns, there's a video in quantitative reasoning called Number Patterns. If you go to Ed Accelerator, you click on your profile picture, you click on resources, and you go into quantitative reasoning, you'll find it there. And it kind of breaks it down pretty easily. Now, some people are saying, can we do questions on quadratics as well? Now, quadratics, again, very unlikely to be on the exam. It's possible, but not the most likely thing. So we'll do it if people really want it, but we'll see how we go with that one. Now, I'll just quickly get this stuff off the screen. Clear all drawings. Now, this person said, I have a question about verbal reasoning questions where you have to guess which is irrelevant, relevant, and stuff. How do you get these right if all of them are pretty much the same? Please give some tips. So for these particular ones, let's have a look at them, this particular questions that were sent through. Because the reality is that there'll always be one option that is right. There will never be multiple correct answers. And so there'll always be something that differentiates them, something that makes one of them wrong. And so generally the question you want to ask, if you've got two options, they're really similar. So you want to ask, what's one thing in this question that makes it wrong, that makes it invalidated? Now, in this question here, does anyone want to explain why this option here is worse? Like what's happening in this question? I'll open up the chat. People want to explain their thinking. Keep your hand up if you want to have a go at explaining this question here. We'll go to Marcus.
Well, maybe in the wrong answer, it says that it views the act as reasonable, whereas the second one defends the driver's intentions. So instead of viewing it as reasonable, just defending it. And comment 4 regards it as selfish instead of wrong. They regard it as something that is morally wrong instead of maybe lawfully wrong or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking about it. So probably the big thing, there's one big giveaway which makes this first option here. So this first option A, there's something that makes this one wrong. And what it is it says here, comment 1 views the act as reasonable. So comment 1 says taking up 2 parking spaces is a practical choice if the driver is protecting their car from potential damage. So comment 1 is kind of viewing the act as reasonable. I would agree with that. Comment 4 views it as inherently inconsiderate. Now, inherently inconsiderate, would we say that's potentially extreme language, saying it's inherently inconsiderate?
Yes.
So yeah, it's like Mark says, it's quite extreme language. And so that means that A is okay, but it's quite extreme. Whereas number 3 here defends the driver's intentions. Does comment 1 defend the driver's intentions? Yes, it does. Does comment 4 assume selfishness regardless of intent? Yeah, it kind of does. So comment 4 says parking across 2 spaces reflects a lack of consideration for others, regardless of the driver's intention. So it literally says that there. And so once again, this first option here, it's not completely horrible. It's not completely wrong, but it's not the best option. This third one here is just better. And so probably for this student who's asking this question here, who's saying, well, I'm stuck on 2 options. They're similar. I can't spot the difference. What should I do? There's probably 2 things you want to consider. One is, what's one small thing in one of these options that you're looking at that makes it wrong? In this case, this extreme language made this one worse. But the other thing is just asking yourself, well, both of the options probably have some truth to them. Which one is just a better option? Which one's stronger? It's clearer. It doesn't have extreme language. It sounds more sophisticated. That's probably going to be the better one. So that's probably one thing for this one here. Maybe let's just hear it in the chat. So someone said around how many questions should you get right in the test? So the reality is it's very hard to know what percentage you should need to get on the exam because it changes from year to year. Some years you'll need 80%, some years you'll need 50%, depending on how hard the exam is. Maths last year, for example, it was super difficult. People were leaving half the exam blank and they were still being in the top 10%. And so it does kind of depend. But what I generally recommend, aim on our mock exams to get about 80 to 85%. If you get that, you're going to be sorted. You're going to be all good. So you may as well aim to get to that point, because if you get that, you're all set. But really, you just want to be in the top 10% on the exam in as many sections as possible. The way I think about it is just try and be in the top 10%, really. Now, let's just have a look at this other one quickly, which is this one here. So this one, again, there was actually something that made it wrong. Marcus, so some people are saying, is there any extra optional teaching classes that you can attend throughout the week? Now, there's no optional teaching classes on top of the ones we're currently doing, although there will be later on. So in the final 8 weeks, we do heaps of bonus classes, but you can always watch all the past recordings from the last year. So we will cover all that content again, but you can always watch that as well. So this question here, wearing bright colored clothing makes people feel happier. This student went with this one here, saying bright colored clothing is linked to positivity and energy. The concept also used in marketing and design to influence mood, whereas the best option was this one here. Many people who wear bright clothing are often seen smiling and engaging more in social activities, exemplifying a connection between clothing choice and well-being. So this particular one here, What was really the problem with it was, maybe we'll hear from Oscar.
So the reason why number 2 is least relevant is because it kind of just assume like they're just different things. They don't have things in common that people that wear bright clothes are often seen smiling. Like that's not proven by anything. It's just yeah, it's just kind of they're not related probabilities.
I agree. Oscar's exactly right. So what this is here, this is an example of making a big assumption. For example, if I said that I saw a student eating a banana, therefore, if you eat bananas, you get top grades because this student also was top of his class, that's obviously not really true. Just because you saw someone eating a banana and you later saw them getting a top grade doesn't mean anything about bananas contributing to top grades. That's just totally made up. Same thing if I just said students who have mugs on their desks get higher grades because I once saw a student who had a mug on his desk and he got a top grade. That's obviously not really real. That's just sort of not something that we can reasonably infer. And so that's why that's the case there. Maybe let's hear from Azak. What did you think?
No, just building off the example that you said, if a student's eating a banana, then they're going to get a high grade. I think the concept that is being said is a correlation versus connection.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So another example with that would be if I, for example, said, when people eat ice creams, the sun comes out. That's an example where you're mistaking the cause of something. Like the reality is that people probably eat ice cream because it's hot. It doesn't become hot because people eat ice cream.
Yes, and I think for this question, the wrong answer, bright colored clothing, is linked to positivity and energy, a concept also used in marketing and designed to influence mood. I think that one is quite vague and it's not really connected to the topic.
I agree. This one is actually pretty vague. The only connection is probably positivity. You'll probably link positivity to happiness. But otherwise, this one is pretty vague as well. I would agree.
Thank you.
Probably the difference is this one just has, that's kind of what made this one hard. This one is pretty irrelevant still, but it's linked to positivity in some way. This one is just making a huge assumption with like very little evidence to it. So this one is worse, which is why it's least relevant. And so that is good. So what we're going to do is a few sort of updates from here. So there's kind of two main updates. One update, if you found these questions difficult, like I said earlier, because I know some people are joining later, we're going to be running a bonus session. So next Friday, Charles is going to spend about the first 30, 45 minutes just going through these two types of questions. We'll have a few practice ones there. We'll do a little bit of extra practice. He'll run through these exact questions, but we'll have some other ones as well, some new ones that we can go through just to learn that skill a little bit more. That will apply to both these coin ones, but also these weird ones, which quite a few people have sent through as well, like z squared equals z plus 6, then z cubed equals what? So that will be something we'll be doing as well. Now, the other thing is there was quite a few people who sent through probability questions. So for example, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Now we're actually going to spend the teaching lesson next week is going to be on probability. So we're going to have a full 90-minute class on probability. It's going to be a pretty intensive class. We're going to cover probability again after the exam. And so we won't go through these questions today. I'm going to save them for next week's Q&A just because we're doing a full lesson on probability. Now, next week's probability lesson, it's going to start off with the most basic probability possible. So year 6 level probability, and it'll ramp us all the way up to like year 9. So we're going to get through it quite a bit in that one, which will be good. Someone's asking for this link. So this link here is actually for the usual Friday Q&A link. So if you're in this class right now, this is the class that it will be. I'll post it in the chat anyway, but yeah. Junwei says she asked the X3 one. Yeah, so quite a lot of people asked these ones. These ones kind of have a full strategy for it, which we might spend about 30 minutes going through. It probably deserves a full breakdown because it's tricky and we want to make sure that it's easily understandable. So that's kind of the plan with these ones. For these particular questions, come to the Q&A next Friday. We're going to have a lot of extra practice ones to do. For probability, we're going to spend a whole lesson doing it next week. And then a couple of weeks later, we're going to have probability 2. So we'll have probability 1, which will be the basics of probability, make sure we're all on the same page. Then we'll do probability 2, which is going to be the super abstract, super annoying questions that they sometimes have on the exam that everyone gets confused by. We'll spend a whole lesson on that. So let's do a couple of questions, maybe Oscar.
Didn't we do probability like fairly recently with the irrelevant and relevant probabilities and the tree diagrams?
Did you attend? Were you in the Thursday 6 p.m. class? Tuesday 6 p.m.?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, so that class did it slightly early. So you'll be doing something different in that class. That specific time is like 1 week ahead.
Okay. And as well, when do we have to do mock exams for like practice?
That's a good question. So I might go through that now because we did release that. So for those of you who haven't seen this yet, we just released another mock exam. If you haven't done a mock exam yet, if you have, I would do this one first. So if we've got quite a few mock exams up, but this is the most realistic for the real exam. And so you may as well do this one first. It's based on all our research since the exam. Now, Uzair says, is the mock exam also ranked against each other? It is. So you'll see how you go compared to everyone else. So if you click on your photo, you click on resources, you click on mock exams, you can see there's a bunch of mock exams here. This 6th one, ESA, this is the best one to do first. So I'd recommend doing this one first if you can. Once you finish, you'll be able to see how you're going compared to everyone else. So far, the average is about 50% in maths. In quantitative, it's about 50%. In reading, it's about 50%. Verbal, it's about it's higher in verbal. It's about 70%. And in these ones, I haven't marked them yet, so we're not sure. Now, some people are saying, can you show again how to access this? So basically what you do is when you log in, you click on your photo, you click on resources, then you click on mock exams here. Same thing if anyone wants lesson recordings, they're here. These are all video courses. So like when I was talking about the pattern video from before, if you click on quantitative reasoning number patterns, this video is pretty good. It's probably worth watching. We'll do a few more questions and then we will see. So someone said after getting into a selective school, will there be some sort of party? So yeah, so after the exam, we normally do like a pizza party for everyone to come to in person. So if you make it to the end of the program, you sit the exam, the pizza party will be available. Let's hear a few questions. Chow, did you have a comment?
No, I accidentally kept it up. Sorry.
Oh, that's all good. No worries. So maybe if you've got a question, keep your hand up. Otherwise, no worries. You can take it down. Oscar? Oh, okay. So there's a question which is, when do we have to do the mock exam by? I'd personally recommend doing it within the next 2 weeks. You've got 2 weeks to do it because we're going to be releasing new mock exams every 2 weeks for the next little bit, and then we'll do it every 1 week. So yeah, try and do that in the next 2 weeks so that you're ready for the next one to come out. Okay.
So with the mock exams, how would you recommend we do those mock exams? Because I've looked at the mock exams and, well, obviously as you showed them, there's like a mock exam for like every part of the actual exam. So do you recommend we do it all in one go, or do we like break it up a little bit?
So that's a good question. So should you do the full mock exam in one go, or should you break it up? Personally, if it's your first ever mock exam, I would probably maybe consider breaking it up just so you can get a bit of a feel of how it is. If you've already done a couple of mock exams, I'd probably start to practice doing it all at once. So I know it's annoying. It's super annoying having to do an exam for 3 hours in a row, but it's going to give you a better indication of your progress. So basically, if it's your first one, maybe just do it in each little part, do maths and then do verbal another night. But if you've done a few mock exams before, it's probably worth doing it all in one go. Jonathan, got a question?
For probability, will we be looking at like more advanced probability, like A union B elements and null, or Are we going to be just looking at the dice probability?
It's mainly the dice probability. We may get to that right at the end. So that's most
Okay.
likely to come up on the exam, but we'll probably do like a little bit on it at the end, just so that for the type of stuff that could come up, you're covered for it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All good. Manaza?
I have two questions. So the first question is like the new mock exam, is it like really similar to like the test that might happen like this year?
Yeah, so it's very similar. So basically, the way we made this particular mock exam is 3 people who were in our program last year who sat the exam who got into Melbourne High and McRob. They basically tried to remember every possible question they could on the exam, and we worked with them to create this one. So they were obviously in the exam, and they said it's extremely similar to last year's one. So it's very similar to last year's. Will it be exactly the same as this year's? Probably not. There will be changes. It will be different, but it's based on people who are in there trying to remember as many questions as possible. So that's kind of what it's going to be like. Basically, for your final mock exam before the exam, it's essentially going to be our replica of last year's exam. So they've also made a replica of the exam from this year, which will be like our final test. So yeah, basically should be super similar.
Okay. And for the second question, like I did like for the mock exam, I did like the verbal reasoning and I got 85% on it. Is that good like so far, or like is it like bad?
That's good. So I saw your score. Basically, if you're getting that level already, that's good. That suggests that for that section of the exam, you're doing really well. I probably would, for example, do the other ones and see if there's any other areas where you're weaker, because that's a really good score.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good stuff. User says, what was the success rate last year from this program? So last year, from people who did the homework fairly regularly, like they did it at least 80% of the time when they attended classes, it was about 70% that got in. Let's do Nehan.
So I didn't really see how you can enter the mock exam, so can I please see how it's done?
Yeah, no worries. But basically, you see the mock exam. I'll just mute you there because I think it's echoing a bit. To do the mock exam, you click on your photo. So we'll come up with this little thing here. Then you click on resources. Then within this resources tab, this is where everything really is hidden. That's not the basic homework. So you click on mock exam. You click on mock exam 6. And you click on whatever one you want. So for example, click on maths and do it. That's kind of how we access it. Now, that some people are asking, one thing I would say is people were saying our percentages were good. One thing to consider is so far in this program, only 48% of people are completing their homework on average. And so that at this point, I would expect our success rate to be about 48% or so. Because generally, people who do the homework get in, but people who don't, unfortunately. So hopefully we can ramp that up before the exam. If you have a really good final 4 months, then that's going to be fine still. You should still be able to get in. But yeah. Let's go to, do we have any hands? Yeah. We'll go to Jay.
Hi Charlie. I had 2 questions. So the first one is I've been doing like all the work and like so I've been doing my daily like personalized plan, and then also like I haven't started mock exams because I'm not really like confident in like my skills right now, so I'm just keep on like practicing. But sometimes I get like really off track, and even though I've been watching like your high performance videos and like other videos like how to stay focused, like I'm not sure how to like remove the distractions around me, or like another thing is like it's really hard to like stay consistent. Like I've made up this plan for myself where I do like a few lessons, like so I always do my daily lesson. If I have time, most of the time I do like my verbal like vocabulary quiz, and then so every day I split it up into like different like subjects on the exam. So I go through the videos and like take notes down, or like use flashcards and stuff. But for those videos, most of them are like really long, and like some of them, and I can't really like concentrate on them. And whenever like I do, I kind of just skip through like all the, like I only do like what like when you like explaining something and when you're like giving examples or like letting like us do the question, and like it's really hard to be like consistent. So how do you be consistent with this stuff?
I think that's a good question. Probably what I'd say personally for you, Jay, and probably for a lot of other people, if you've done quite a lot of watching of lessons and resources already, I would probably sit a mock exam, Jay, just so you can start to be more focused, because it's very hard. I'm sure you've all had this situation where if you go through and try and watch like hours and hours and hours of videos in a row, it's very
like
easy.
I tried like I kind of tried to cram everything together like and like one subject I would just try to watch it in one day. But like eventually I've done that for like a few subjects, but like eventually I realized that it's not really working. So either like I just can't focus at all or I just skip the whole video like initially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
once and then what I like kind of thought yesterday when I tried to realize that was that I can just go through like 2 or 3, focus like really well on it
Yeah.
and like create flashcards on like Quizlet or something like that to like memorize what I need to do. And so yeah, but it's still kind of going hard being consistent.
Yeah, so I think there's probably two things there. One is kind of like how do you learn new concepts? Personally, it's not bad to just try and cram, like watch like 10 videos all in one day occasionally just to kind of get it all in your brain. Like it won't click right away, but it's a good way of just getting stuff in there, and when you come back to it later, it makes sense. Otherwise, though, personally, the best way of doing it generally, some people are saying should you do the daily vocab quiz. Personally, I would, because vocab is a big part of the exam. But the best way overall is to break each subject down into like the subtopics. So for example, for verbal reasoning, what I'd personally do is like step 1 is sit an exam. Step 2 is figure out 1 to 2 weakest areas. So for example, you might realize for the vocab, you're kind of good, but maybe like conditional statements, you're struggling.
Yeah.
And then step 3 would probably be like rewatch those lessons. Because
So like just specific ones like your recap or like something like that, right?
Yeah, because then if you think about it, there's more motivation for you to rewatch it because you know, oh, I
Yeah.
just got that wrong. It's more interesting
Yes,
and you
yes.
know, like you didn't really get it.
Yeah, I did that for like the reading comprehension. So yesterday I was doing that and I realized that in reading comprehension generally it's really easy for me, but like there's like a few parts like inferences where I kind of got it all wrong. And also like the tone of the message or what like the passage is trying to like tell you. So those type of questions I kept on getting wrong. So I watched those videos and realized that for inferences that I was just writing down like what was pretty much written already when actually it was more like a conclusion and not what I was supposed to write, not what like it's already said there. So
Yeah, I think that's very true. It's probably the extra step on top of this. Some people are saying they feel like they're not improving. This is really the way to improve. Figure out a section, sit an exam, figure out your weakest areas, rewatch those lessons. Try and maybe sit another exam if you still don't improve. Send a message to support@accelerator.com saying, hey, this question I'm bad at. For example, I tried to, I'm still bad at it. Why is that? Can we cover it in a Q&A? And we can just cover that for like 20 minutes here. So,
okay. And I also had another question. So after the videos, you give like homework, but like I can never seem to like find it. So like the extra, like you tell us like in like one of the videos, it was like for like planning, like creative writing planning or like persuasive, where you said you like gave us like tons of prompts and then it was like a whole document and just practice a few every day. But I can't find any of them. So where can we find it?
So we actually removed those questions just because the ones originally under there, they weren't really relevant for the new exam. So like the exam changes we had to remove them. We will be releasing though essentially before the real exam like a booklet which has all the major question types and a couple of questions for them. So that's something to look for soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Charlie.
All good, thank you. So a few people are saying, can they leave? You're welcome to leave if you want. Otherwise, we'll do a couple more questions just before we go. So maybe let's just do Mateo.
Sorry, I didn't ask this question before, but with like I have two. But so with the previous exams before the mock exam 6, would you recommend doing those as well, or would you just recommend doing mock exam 6 and then all those after?
I'll probably do mock exam 6 first, and then these ones after. Because it's a bit different to some of these ones. These ones are still good to do for practice, but mock exam 6 is more accurate. So I do 6 first.
Okay, and just with the probability lessons, would that be like the regular lessons that like the regular 4:30 to 6 lessons that happen every week?
Yeah. So your regular lesson next week will just be on probability.
Okay, thank you.
All good. Let's do a couple more, and then we'll wrap up because I know some people they're eager to be let free. You're welcome to leave if you want, but Safia.
So you know how there's like when you go into Ed Accelerator, there are like the tutoring class links.
Yeah.
So I have thing on, so my normal teaching class is on Tuesday 4:30, but I have something that popped up on Tuesday 4:30. So is there any way you can change it to like Tuesday 6 o'clock?
Yeah, definitely. So if you just send us an email to support@accelerator.com, the person who replies to that, which is Emma, will be able to move you over on the actual platform.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's all good. Thank you. Let's do a couple more. Manaza.
So I have 2 questions about writing. So firstly, for writing, like when I'm writing, like you know how like the daily prompts that you can write. So is it possible like if we can do on like book, because like the actual test is like on paper, and like
Yeah.
how can I submit it?
So basically we're gonna add that feature soon. I'll see if it still exists on here. Is there that option? Okay, there's not. We'll add that back. Basically, we're going to add an option to this page where you'll be able to toggle between either this or handwritten at some point. Normally, we do it in like the final month because the amount of feedback we can give when we have to do handwriting, it takes a lot longer to do it because a lot of people's handwriting is hard to read in the photos. But in the final, like we'll probably do it pretty soon where you'll be able to toggle here and choose handwriting and upload photos instead.
And also, like, for example, when you're writing and maybe in the actual test when you're writing and like you make mistakes, so how can you like what do you do? Do you cross it out? Like, and also do your marks get like less if you like cross it out and make mistakes?
In the real exam, that would be okay, basically, because it's mainly multi-choice. For writing, if you make a mistake, you just cross it out and whatever, it's fine. It doesn't really matter if it's a little bit messy, it just has to be clear enough. For multi-choice, if you had circled something and you want to change your mind, you just put a cross through it and circle another thing, and that's okay. But all that sort of exam day stuff, we'll do a few sessions on that, so that will all be covered as well.
Okay, thank you.
All good. Good stuff. We'll do 2 more, Azak.
Oh, yeah. So I do have quite a busy schedule each week, and I am lacking behind with the mock exams. And since you said that you're going to increase the consistency of how you're going to release it, increase the mock exams, I already like to bombard myself with a bunch of extra work as well, just so I can get myself up to speed. But how would you recommend that I factor in everything? Because I already do have a schedule on my wall, and I've been trying my best to schedule stuff in, but sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's okay. So probably the truth is you don't have to do that much in terms of time. Like if I said what's most valuable, I'd say attending the teaching class for 90 minutes, that's definitely worthwhile. So I'd do that. So that's 90 minutes there. Outside of that, probably doing the homework and reviewing that carefully is worthwhile because that tests what we did in class and we do some extra practice on questions that are similar to the exam. So that maybe takes 60 minutes, maybe at the most 90 minutes if you review it really slowly. So that's 3 hours. Outside of that, I'd probably then do a mock exam first before attending this class. And so if, for example, you're behind on a mock exam or you wanted to do one, I would, for example, just spend this 60 minutes or 90 minutes just going through a mock exam instead. And so even if you just committed to, let's say, 5 hours per week, which is probably, let's say, 45 minutes a day, I'll just try and find 45 minutes. Well, I guess that's not even because you've got most of that's a 90-minute class. So outside of that 90-minute class, you probably want to find time for 3 hours all up, which let's say that's 30 minutes a day. And so I'm just trying to find 30 minutes somewhere because they're probably like the 2 highest value things, like doing the homework, doing the mock exams, and then coming to Q&As with questions if you can. And so personally, like what I did is I did 30 minutes before school because I found that was the only time where I could always do it. Like every day I could always do 30 minutes before school when I was in year 12. And on the weekend, like I used to just wake up at like 8 and just sort of do an hour or something. So that's kind of, would that work potentially, do you reckon? Or after school for you?
I feel like that might work. I already have scheduled everything, and I think what you said that you did, how you woke up early, might help as well. Just that extra 30 minutes a day.
Yeah, that's probably one thing. It sounds like if you've already got a schedule, then really the second thing is just some things have more of an impact than another. Like it's easy to do stuff and it doesn't help your grade, your scores that much, and other things
Yeah.
do have a
And you also recommend that if I don't have any questions for the Q&A, I focus on completing the mock exams and completing the homework more than that.
Yeah, I would say so. So that probably applies with everyone. Like if you come to the Q&A just because you feel like you have to and you've got really nothing to cover and you just sort of do random stuff, you'll probably be better off doing the mock exam, for example.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's all good. So on that note, unfortunately, I've got to run to another class, but we'll just quickly do one more because I know a few people have been waiting a while. Japanese.
So I have a quick question. So I can understand like concepts real quickly, but I can never remember them. Like I understand the concept, but like I forget it a few days later. So is there anything you can help with that?
So probably the reality is that that's the case with everyone. So what the stats kind of show is that on the first day you learn something, some people pick it up faster than others, but once you've learned it, most people will have forgotten it after a week, like literally 95% of people or 99% of people. And it really just comes down to regular practice. So what the science kind of shows is when you first learn something, you probably want to revise it initially after a week. And then after that, after 2 weeks, and then after 4 weeks, and then after 8 weeks. So the amount of time you can wait between revision kind of like doubles each time. So probably, for example, if we cover, for example, probability next week, I'd probably try and do a little bit of revision the week after, and then maybe 2 weeks after that, do some more revision, and 4 weeks after that. And so constantly be revising the stuff we did in class, if that potentially helps.
Thank you.
That's okay. All good. We'll do Shri just because I know been waiting a while, and that will be our final one. Feel free to unmute Shri if you're still here. Otherwise, maybe not. That's okay. So yeah, so we might wrap up there. Thank you everyone for attending today's session and going a little bit over time. Thanks Junwei, thanks Marnie. Great to see you all. Thanks Pranshiv. Thanks Hatath. Thanks Suzair. Thanks Gori. Thanks Oscar. Thanks Shimmer. Good stuff, everyone. Good luck for the mock exam if you do it over the weekend, or if you're just doing the homework, good luck for that. Otherwise, see you next week, everyone.